The night my son told me to pack my things, his wife was standing behind him in the hallway, arms crossed, not even trying to hide the smile on her face. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. This man I had taught to skate on the rink behind our old place in Bury. This man I had driven 4 hours to Kingston every single Thanksgiving because that's where his university was, and I didn't want him eating cafeteria food on a holiday. And I thought, he means it. He actually means it. Dad, it's not personal, he said. Stephanie and I just need our space. The kids are getting older, the house feels crowded, and honestly, it's been hard having another adult around all the time. Another adult. That's what I had become. Another adult. That's what I had become. I had moved in with my son Walter and his wife Stephanie 18 months earlier, after I sold my house in Sudbury. My wife Pauline had passed 2 years before that. Ovarian cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end. And after she was gone, the house stopped feeling like a home. It felt like a museum. Every room had something of hers in it, and I couldn't move anything. And I couldn't leave anything where it was. I was stuck. My doctor told me I needed a change. My son called and said, "Dad, come stay with us. We have the space. It'll be good for everyone." Good for everyone. I want to be clear about something because it matters for everything that comes after. When I moved in, Walter and Stephanie were stretched thin. They had bought a 4-bedroom in Oakville at the peak of the market, $1.4 million, variable rate mortgage, the works. Walter was doing well as a project manager, but Stephanie had gone part-time after their second kid and the numbers were tight. I knew this. I never said anything about it to them, but I knew. So I started contributing. Not in a showy way, not with an envelope on the kitchen counter. I just quietly started covering things. Their hydro bill, their grocery runs, and I'm talking real grocery runs, the kind where you fill 2 carts at Costco and spend $400 without blinking. I bought both grandkids their hockey equipment for the season, registered them in camps, took them to their Saturday morning games when Walter had to work, and every month I transferred $2,800 into their joint account. I told Walter it was for room and board. In truth, it was closer to keeping them afloat. I didn't do any of this for credit. I did it because they were my family, and because doing things for people you love is how you feel less alone when the person you loved most in the world is gone. But here's what I didn't tell them, and here's the part that matters. I had money. Real money. Not the kind that comes from being flashy or lucky, but the kind that comes from 40 years of working as a civil engineer, living below your means, investing steadily, and letting compound interest do what compound interest does when you leave it alone. Pauline and I had always lived simply. We drove sensible cars. We took 1 trip a year, usually somewhere in the Maritimes. We didn't renovate unless something broke. And so by the time she died and by the time I sold the Sudbury house, I was sitting on just under $2.9 million in registered and non-registered accounts, plus a defined benefit pension from 31 years with the province. Walter knew I had some savings. He did not know the number. Stephanie found out 8 months into my stay. I don't know exactly how. I think she saw a statement I left on the kitchen counter by accident, or maybe Walter said something when he was tired one night and his guard was down. But she found out, and after that, everything shifted. Subtly at first. She started making comments about the house being too small for 3 adults. She started scheduling things during times I was usually in the common areas. She stopped including me in the family dinners she cooked and started making just enough for herself, Walter, and the kids. Little things. Death by 1,000 cuts. I tried talking to Walter about it once. He got uncomfortable, changed the subject, said Stephanie was just going through a phase, and that I should give her some space. I gave her space. It didn't help. Then one Tuesday evening in November, I came home from my weekly card game at the community center in Burlington. I joined a group there, men mostly around my age. We played cribbage, nothing exciting, and I walked into what felt like I'd interrupted a conversation that had been going on for a long time. Walter was standing in the front hallway. Stephanie was behind him on the stairs. He looked like he hadn't slept. She looked like he hadn't slept. She looked like she'd been waiting for this for months. He said, Dad, we need you to find your own place. I think it's time. We've been talking about it and we both feel like this arrangement isn't working anymore. I asked him what specifically wasn't working. He didn't have an answer for that. He looked back at Stephanie, and she took that as her cue. She said the house felt crowded, that the kids needed more routine, that having a grandparent around all the time wasn't healthy for the family dynamic. I won't repeat everything she said. Some of it was insulting in a way that I think she intended to land softly but didn't. The word she used that I remember most was intrusive. She said my presence had become intrusive. Walter said nothing to correct her. I stood there for a moment. I thought about Pauline. I thought about what she would have said if she'd been in that hallway. She would have said something sharp and precise, something that would have made Stephanie go quiet and Walter look at his shoes. But Pauline wasn't there, and I was 63 years old, standing in my son's front hallway, being told I was intrusive. "All right," I said. "I'll make arrangements." That was all I said. Walter looked relieved. Stephanie went back upstairs. I went to my room and I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time in the dark. The next morning, I started making phone calls. The first call was to a real estate agent in Burlington, a woman named Patricia, who had been recommended to me by one of the men from my card group. I told her I was looking for something to buy, 2 bedrooms, quiet street, nothing fancy, budget up to $900,000. She had 3 listings for me by the end of the day. I saw them all that week. The second call was to my financial advisor at the wealth management office in downtown Toronto. His name is Philip and I've worked with him for 16 years. I told him I needed to restructure some things. He asked how serious I was. I said very serious. The third call was to my estate lawyer, a woman I've been using since Pauline passed. I told her I needed to update my will. She booked me in for the following Monday. I didn't tell Walter any of this. Every evening I came home, helped the kids with their homework if they wanted it, ate whatever I'd picked up for myself on the way back, and went to bed. I was polite. I was quiet. I was already gone in every way that counted. 3 weeks after that conversation in the hallway, I put an offer on a 2-bedroom condo on a tree-lined street in Burlington, 10 minutes from the lake. It was the second unit I'd looked at. Good bones, updated kitchen, south-facing balcony. The offer was accepted on a Friday afternoon. I did not tell Walter. That same week, I cancelled the automatic transfer to their joint account. I had set it up through my own bank. Walter had never seen the transfer details, only the deposits. So there was nothing he needed to do on his end. It just stopped. I also called Hydro One and removed my name from the account I'd added myself to. Same with the Costco membership I'd been paying that they used freely. On a Sunday in early December, I packed my things. It took most of the morning. 23 years of a life with Pauline fit into 8 boxes and 4 bags in the back of my truck. Walter was at a hockey game with the kids. Stephanie was upstairs. She heard me moving things and came to the top of the stairs once, looked down, said nothing, and went back to her room. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "I've found my own place. Took your advice. I hope things settle down for you. The transfer has been cancelled as I'm now covering my own expenses. Take care of the kids. Dad." I drove to Burlington. Patricia met me at the condo with the keys. I remember standing in the empty living room with the winter light coming through the sliding door to the balcony, boxes stacked behind me, and feeling something I hadn't expected to feel. Not sadness, not anger. Quiet. Just quiet. The first real quiet I'd had in a long time. I ordered the pizza. I sat on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet. I ate 3 slices and watched the snow come down on the balcony, and I thought, this is fine. This is going to be fine. The call started 11 days later. I know it was 11 days because I had been counting, in a mild way, the way you count something you know is coming but aren't sure when. Walter called on a Wednesday evening. I let it go to voicemail. He called again the next morning. I listened to both messages before calling back. The first message was casual, almost too casual. "Hey Dad, just checking in, hope the move went okay, give me a call when you get a chance." The second message was less casual. His voice had that particular tightness I recognized from when he was a teenager and something had gone wrong. "Dad, I need to talk to you about some stuff. It's kind of urgent. Please call me back." I called him back on a Thursday evening. He answered on the first ring. He started with small talk, which was unlike him. Then he said, "Hey, so the mortgage payment bounced last week." I said I was sorry to hear that. He said, "We're about $3,400 short this month. Between the mortgage and the utilities and everything, we're just coming up short, and I was wondering," I said, "Walter, I'm not sure I understand. You and Stephanie have your incomes. What changed?" There was a pause. "Dad, you know what changed. You moved out." "Right," I said. "You asked me to." Another pause. Longer this time. He started explaining. The $2,800 a month had been, it turned out, factored into their budget in a way that he described as, we sort of built our expenses around it. The grocery contributions, the hydro, the kids' activities, all of it had quietly become load-bearing. Without it, their monthly budget didn't balance. They hadn't saved a cushion because they hadn't needed to. The money was just always there. I listened to all of this. Then I said, "I understand. I hope you're able to sort it out. A financial advisor might be helpful, or you could call the bank about a payment plan. There are options." He went quiet again. Then, "Dad, are you serious right now? I'm asking for help." "I know," I said, "and I'm not trying to be cruel. But you told me my presence was intrusive and that you needed me to leave. I left. I'm living on my own now, covering my own expenses, which are considerable. I'm not in a position to resume the contributions." "We never meant for you to stop the money." I let that sentence sit in the air for a moment. "Walter," I said, "I moved in with you because I was grieving your mother and you invited me. I contributed to your household because it was the right thing to do and because I love you and your kids. I did not consider it a permanent financial arrangement, and I was never told that it was one." He didn't say anything. "I think," I said, "that the two of you need to have a real conversation about your finances without me in the picture. This is something you can work through, but I'm not going to be the solution." He hung up. Not angrily, exactly. He hung up. Stephanie called the following Saturday. I answered because I was curious. She was warmer than I expected, which told me she had rehearsed this. She said she wanted to apologize for how things had ended. She said she knew it must have been hard to leave. She said the kids missed me. That last part was probably true, and it was the only thing in the call that actually landed. Then she said she wanted to talk about the arrangement and whether there was any possibility of revisiting it, even partially. Maybe just the grocery contributions or the kids' activities, because money was tight, and she and Walter were under enormous stress. I told her I appreciated the apology and that I accepted it. I told her I missed the kids too and that I hoped to keep seeing them. And I told her as gently as I could that I would not be resuming any financial support for their household. I said it wasn't about punishment. I said it was simply the natural result of no longer living with them. She pushed. She said they could talk about a new arrangement. Maybe I could move back on different terms. I said I was very happy in my new home. She said things were really difficult right now, and I said I understood that, and I was sorry, and I meant it, but my answer was no. We said goodbye. She hasn't called since. What I haven't mentioned yet, because it's the part that I sat with the longest, is what I did before I moved out, not with the bank transfers or the utilities. The other thing, I had booked that Monday with my estate lawyer. I went in and we rewrote my will from scratch. The original will had left everything equally to Walter and his sister, my daughter Roberta, who lives in Halifax with her husband and their 3 kids, and who, for the record, has never once asked me for anything. Roberta called me every Sunday. Roberta flew to Sudbury to help me sort through Pauline's things when I couldn't bring myself to do it alone. Roberta drove 9 hours to Burlington with a truck full of furniture when she heard I was moving into an empty condo, because she said she didn't want me sleeping on the floor. I didn't change the will to punish Walter. I want to be honest about that. I changed it because I looked at the two of them clearly, without love distorting my vision, and I thought about what each of them had shown me about who they are, and the split that felt right to me was 70% to Roberta and 20% into a trust for the 4 grandchildren. Split equally accessible at 25 for education or a home purchase, and 10 to the Parkinson's Society of Canada. Because Pauline's father had Parkinson's and she always said she wanted to do something for it someday. Walter's share of my estate is now 0. That is not cruelty. That is honesty. I have not told him this. He doesn't need to know right now. It's not information that will improve either of our lives in the present. The grandchildren have started coming on Saturdays. Roberta helped me set it up. She called Walter and was very matter-of-fact about it, the way she is about everything, and said the kids needed their grandfather and that whatever was happening between the adults shouldn't affect that. Walter agreed. I think because he didn't know how to say no to Roberta. She has always been better at managing him than I am. So now my grandson comes over and we watch hockey night in Canada on Saturday evenings and I make too much popcorn and his sister sits at my kitchen table doing crafts while I pretend not to be completely charmed by everything she makes. Last week she gave me a paper plate with stickers on it that said, "World's Best Grandpa," and I have it on my fridge, and I am not embarrassed to admit that. I walk by the lake most mornings. There's a path that runs along the waterfront, and in the winter it's quiet, and in the summer it will be busier. But right now it's just me and a few dog walkers and the geese who haven't figured out yet that they're supposed to go somewhere warmer. I stop at the same bench most days. I drink my coffee. I think about Pauline. Not with the kind of grief that stops you in your tracks anymore, but with the kind that's more like company. Like she's just slightly off to the left, walking with me. I am 63 years old. I have a pension. I have my savings. I have my health. And I have a south-facing balcony and a paper plate on my fridge. I don't need much else. Walter called once more, about a month after the last conversation. He didn't ask for money this time. He just said he was sorry for how things had gone. He said Stephanie and he had started seeing a financial counselor and that they were working on it. He said he missed me. I told him I missed him too, and I meant it, and I told him the door was open. I'm not sure what comes next between us. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. I've stopped trying to know in advance how things will turn out. Pauline used to say that the people who are always bracing for the next thing miss the thing they're already in the middle of. She was right about most things. The geese are still out there this morning. It's cold enough that there's ice on the edges of the path, and I walked carefully to the bench, and I sat down with my coffee, and the water was very still and very grey and very beautiful. I've decided to stay in Burlington. There's something nobody tells you about getting older, that the clearest moments of your life don't come when things are going well. They come when something breaks open and you're forced to look at what's actually there. The night Walter told me to find my own place, I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of them. I went to my room and I sat in the dark and I thought about every transfer I'd made, every bag of groceries I'd carried in, every Saturday morning I'd driven the kids to hockey so he and Stephanie could sleep in. And I thought, they didn't ask me to stop any of that. They just asked me to leave. Those two things were supposed to be separate in their minds. That told me everything I needed to know about how they saw me. What happened after wasn't about revenge. I want to be honest about that, because I've turned it over enough times to be sure. I canceled the transfers because I was no longer living there. I updated my will because I looked at my two children clearly, without wishful thinking softening the edges. And I made an honest assessment. Those were rational decisions. They felt hard, but they were not complicated. Here's what I've come to understand. The way a person treats you when they think they have the upper hand is who they actually are. Walter is not a bad man, but he stood in that hallway and said nothing while his wife called me intrusive, and that silence told me more about his character than 30 years of Sunday dinners ever had. Good values aren't something you have on your best days. They're what you hold on to when it costs you something to hold on. Stephanie understood money. What she didn't understand, and what I think Walter's only beginning to understand now, is that you cannot manage a relationship the way you manage a spreadsheet. You cannot extract the financial contribution and discard the person it came from. There are consequences to that kind of thinking, and they are not punishments handed down from somewhere above. They are simply the natural result of the choices you make. You build your life on a foundation you didn't actually own, and eventually you find out. As for me, I had to decide at 63 whether I still had enough left in me to rebuild a life that was genuinely mine. Not Pauline's life, not Walter's version of what his father should be doing in his later years. Mine. That takes something that doesn't come easily at any age. It takes the willingness to sit in an empty condo on a cold December night, eating pizza on the floor and say, this is enough to start with. I can do this. I think about Roberta driving 9 hours with a truck full of furniture. I think about my grandson's face when the Leafs score. I think about the bench by the lake and the geese who haven't sorted out their winter plans yet. None of that is dramatic. None of it makes a very interesting story at a dinner party. But it is mine, and I earned it. And on most mornings when I walk down to the water, I feel something that I can only describe as intact. That's what I'd want anyone to take from this, if they're taking anything at all. Not that you should cut people off or keep score, or wait for the moment when you can prove a point, but that knowing who you are, what you've built, what you're worth, what you're willing to accept, is not arrogance. It's the only thing that keeps you standing when the people you love most decide, even briefly, that you're optional. I'm not optional. I'm not optional.